Right guys, now let's go ahead and continue with our Artisteer project. So what I'm going to do is double click on my little saved file here. This is my Artisteer project file. So double click on that to bring me back to where I was. In this section I'd like to work on my header. So I can do that by going to the header section or by clicking on the header itself. So if I'm anywhere else in Artisteer, I can just click on the section I want to edit and it will activate it for me. You can go through the process of just suggesting the header if you wish, and you can also change the position of the header. We've kind of messed around with this a bit in the layout, but remember what I was saying about you can make broad changes. Like if we change the layout of the actual page, it changes everything, including the header. Whereas if we start messing around with this position, it'll only affect the header itself. It won't make any other adjustments to the page. Change the length of it. You see this page width thing is where we kind of started out. If you want it the total width of the screen, so that the header is as wide as the screen is, and then the site is kind of slim. I don't really like that for this particular project, so I'm going to keep it sheet width, so it looks like this. In a second, it's going to update itself any second now. And there it goes. Change the height of the header. This is an important one because you remember what I was saying about the gap at the very top. I don't want a lot of my important content to be below the scroll. There's this thing in web design called the fold. And you remember like a newspaper. Think of the front page of a newspaper. Normally when it's on a newsstand, they fold it backwards, don't they? So you can see the top headline, and then there's the fold halfway down the page, and it folds under itself and then sits on a pile. And traditionally, people who advertise in newspapers will pay more to get their advert above the fold because more people will see it, right? So if you imagine the same sort of thing with web design, once you open out the newspaper, you'd see the full page like this. So once it's opened out, you see all of that without having to do anything. But if you folded the page in half, you would only see that far. So in newspaper terms, you'd see the advertising that was in this section, and then only when people opened the newspaper would they see the bits further down. And the same thing applies to us. All of the important stuff, especially like our calls to action, all the important things we want to display on a page, must go above the fold. And in web design terms, the fold is anything you can see without scrolling. So if we shorten the page again, if we create another fold, so the fold is here. So as soon as I have to do this, anything that you can't see without scrolling, that's below the fold. Okay, so this is an important consideration. And this is what we're talking about, the height of the header. So I wanted things to be above the fold. That's why I reduced the gap above the site, because it didn't serve any purpose whatsoever, and it was just a waste of space. And the same consideration is with the height of the header itself, because all these little things add up. Every time you increase the height of the gap, every time you increase the height of the menu or whatever, it's pushing the content down and down and down, which is not a good thing. So I'm going to keep the height of my header reasonably small. Obviously the height of your header will depend on what you put in it. So before I change that, I'm going to put my logo in it. Now I don't want this blue effect that it's given me. This is part of the original suggestion that Artisteer gave me. So you see here where it says background image, you can drop this down and there's a whole bunch of different backgrounds that are built into Artisteer, like images and God knows what else. But I don't want any of that, so you just click on the no photo option and it just makes it a flat color. And of course you can change that flat color by clicking on it, and you see here where it says fill color. I'm going to have, I'll have a white background like that. Right, this site title and this slogan, these are the two sections in WordPress that it will actually put whatever you select in WordPress, it will put those here. So let me show you exactly where that is. Right, if I just bring up my, there we go, so here I am in the WordPress admin, and when I go to settings and then general, do you remember when we were in here, we had the option of selecting a site title and a tagline. So you can put something in here and put something in here, and these two fields will be used in your theme. So go back to Artisteer a sec. So you can position these wherever you want. So I can click on it and I can move it around. And at the moment it says enter site title, and we can, just so we can see what it's going to look like, we can actually edit this. I might put in because that's what I've put in WordPress itself. So that's what it's going to look like, and we can change the font and all that lot later on, but that's what we're going to do there. Now on this occasion I don't want a slogan, because that's just fine for me. I'm going to have my logo here, my site title here, and then I don't really want a slogan. So I will click on that and then press delete on my keyboard, and that will get rid of it for me. There we go. So now in WordPress, no matter what I put in the tagline, it's not going to show it because I've no place for it. Whereas the site title, whatever I put in there, it's going to display it there, because that's where I've put the placeholder for my site title. Okay, right. Now I want to insert my logo into the header, and that's what this section here is. It's insert, and you've got controls, shapes, and images. So I'm going to use image. So I click on image, and then I'll browse to the folder where my logo file is. Mine happens to be in my temp folder on the desktop. There it is. Okay, now that to me doesn't look quite right. It's got a lot of white space around it. That's the total size of the image, like that. It's got it's a rectangle shape and it's got a white background to it. Now I suppose I could just move this up here if I click on it, and I can use my arrow keys on my keyboard, or I can just click and drag it up here. I'm going to use my arrow keys because it's slightly more precise. So I'll just keep nudging it up, nudging it up. Now you see, eventually that's going to get up against the size of the site, and it's going to start disappearing. That's not a good idea. You want to make sure that it fits properly. So see where that's as far as it should go really. And when I click away from that, that's what it's going to look like. And that doesn't look quite right to me. There's too much space around it. But there's nothing I can do about it, because this white border space is actually in the image itself. So what that means is I need to edit that image before I insert it into Artistia, and that's why we installed paint.net earlier on. So what I do is I click on my image, and then I press delete on my keyboard to get rid of it, and now I need to prepare that image before I insert it again. Right, so here I am in paint.net, which I just loaded up, and I go to either file and open, or I click on the little open folder icon there, and then it wants me to tell it whereabouts my images that I want to edit. So I click on my desktop and temp, and this is the file I want to edit. This little box might look slightly different based on which version of Windows you've got, but it's the same idea. This is the image I want to edit. You see, that's the one with all the space around it. Double click on it, and there we go. This is what we got. So what I want to do is remove all this white space around it, and that is quite a simple edit to make. So you see this little toolbox on the left here. The thing I want to use is this rectangle select tool, which is the one in the top left. If you want to know what any of the tools are called, all you have to do is wave over it, and it tells you. And you see at the moment, paintbrush is selected. You know it's selected because it's got a blue background, and whichever one you select, the background changes to say that's the active tool. But I want this one, rectangular select. So that's that tool selected now. Now I've got a little target cursor like this. What I'm going to do is place it in the sort of top left hand corner of where I want to cut, and then click and hold my mouse button down, and then draw a box around the bit I want to cut out. So I'm going to make sure I go past the shadow, make sure I go past the T there, and I want to make sure that there's still going to be some white space around it, but I want to make sure it's pretty even. So you just use just use your eye to do that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Bear in mind it's going to go on a white background anyway, so it's going to blend in. But I just didn't want all this space to the left, so I just let go of my mouse button there, and there's the area that's selected. Now because I want to cut that out and trim all this stuff out from the edge, I'm going to go up to the image toolbar and click this crop to selection. So it's cropped the image just to the bit I selected, and it's cut out all the other stuff. Now if I save this now, it won't have all that space around it, and when I put it back into Artistia, it should be, it should go up against the left hand side, which is good. So I click on File, I click on Save As, and I'll put it in the same folder. Now you'll notice here this is a JPG image, JPEG. JPEGs are most suitable for photographs with lots and lots of different colours. But with my logo here, as you can see, it's not got that many different colours in it. It's got a few shades of orange, it's got a few shades of blue, but that's it. It's more of an illustration than anything. So if I save it as a JPEG, because of the way JPEGs work, they're more suitable for photographs. If I save it in that format, it might get a bit pixelated, or it might get the file might be slightly too big because it's just not a suitable format. So here where it says save as type, I'll just drop this down. And my favourite file format for illustrations and more cartoony images, if you like, is PNG. So I'll select that. You see it's changed the file extension for me. I'll just call this, I'll just change the name of it. Oh, I could have just left that in there. Web Catalyst Demo, and then I'll call it -logo. It's always best when you're using images, photographs and stuff for websites that you don't have spaces in the file names. So use hyphens, use underscores, whatever. Don't use dots, but just don't use spaces. So I usually just use a hyphen or a dash where I want to space things out. So I might even call that logo header if I want to, and then click save. So it's saying, do we want to optimize this thing? So because you can compress it by restricting the number of colors and whatnot, but you can just leave that on auto detect. Gives you a little preview of what it's going to look like, and it tells you here how big the file is going to be when it's finished. So as you play around with this stuff, it'll show you the different sizes and so on. But I'm just going to leave it on auto detect and click on save. That's it. Right. Now when I close paint.net, we've already saved that, and there it is, my PNG. So I'll minimize that, back to Artist here, make sure I've got my header selected, and I'm on the header tab, click on image again. This time I've got two options. Now I can't quite see which one's which there. I kind of can by the preview, but this little view section, I'm going to change this to details, so it shows me a list, and then I can select the right one. Open that. There we go. That looks much better. So click on my image. I'm going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard. Make sure it's reasonably flush with the top of the screen. Keep pressing my left arrow to nudge it up until it gets to where I want it to be. Almost there. Oops, I think I may have pressed it a few too many times. Yep, gone too far there. Let's nudge it back up again. So I obviously need a faster computer here. Alright, almost there. Right, I want to make sure it's just flush. There we go, like that. Maybe just to be on the safe side, I'll keep it inside the area. And then when I click away, there we go. And that looks a bit close to me, so I'm going to move my site title down a bit, to the right a bit, so it's all flush.